Hello and welcome to the premiere episode number one of our very new show, Remembering Our Generations. And of course, my co-host for this is Vince Lupo. Vince and I formerly did a show called Remembering Woodstock.
That's
And how
right.
that came about was I'd interviewed Vince a couple times before, and he told me, Jason, I spent a day at Woodstock. I think that would make for a real fun interview. And so let's talk about that next time you interview me. And we did that, and we came to find out we had so much more of it we couldn't even get to, but we made a series out of it, and it ran for about 16 episodes, and then we kind of stopped doing it because Vince got very busy touring. He's very I still play out live and everything, and we're going to get into that. But today, our new show, Remembering Our Generations, like I said, this is episode one. We're going to be talking about today specifically the song by The Who, My Generations, and we're going to talk about what the song and the band means to us, and also with that six generations of Who fans. So let's get into it, Vince. Let's, I guess, start with how did you first become a Who fan, and what are your memories of hearing this song for the very first time?
You got it. We're talking about my generation right now.
That's right.
So, all right, I was born in the early 50s. And so when the Beatles came out, it was the British invasion. Now, I liked the 50s music later on, but
Yeah,
when it got into the 60s, the British, it felt, it
sure.
felt that it was for me. So that said, 2 years after, when the Who came along, it was like, who are these guys?
Yeah,
Because there was so much new that kept coming out constantly. We were bombarded with that. In about 65, the American version of the British invasion
sure.
uh, came up. So, specifically about The Who, something about the raw power of their music. It wasn't even the message, it was the music
Yeah,
that drew me in. And we're talking about this specific song and that specific band.
yeah.
Just to recap for people who are unfamiliar, band had four members: the lead singer, the charismatic lead singer Roger Daltrey, the main is the guitar player and the main songwriter Pete Townsend, the bassist extraordinaire the Ox, John Entwistle, incredible bassist, and the unforgettable Keith Moon, baby.
Yeah, yeah.
He brought it, and boy, did he bring it on edge all the time. And that's what really appealed to me was they were so different. They were considered mod, one of the first mod bands.
Yeah.
But this particular song that we're going to talk about is the precursor of punk music.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
was another British band that was on the punk edge in the beginning, which was the Kinks. So, but this we're talking about specifically about this particular band and this particular song because of the show.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you bring up a lot of great points. I mean, let's talk about the fact that this is kind of like the Who's also kind of a harder edge version of maybe the Beatles.
Oh, by far.
And it's very important that, like, to point out, like you said, early on, like in the early years of the Who, they did have a much not just a rock edge to what they did, but like they were thought of as punk, kind of some of what they were doing, including this song, "My Generation." What's interesting too is as charismatic of a frontman and singer as Roger Daltrey. Typically, when we listen to music, a lot of people think, oh, but the singer must be the guy writing all the hits because he's got to feel it. He's got to. But in this case, Pete Townsend, we find out is a principal songwriter. He wrote all those classic Who songs. So in retirement these days, he's making a ton of money off his songwriting royalties. But it's kind of interesting that the guitar player is the one that wrote all those great lyrics.
That's right. And specifically about this song, this was written on a train ride that he took from London to, well, let me put my glasses on here.
Sure.
London to Southampton on his birthday in 1965.
Okay.
And he said the writing of this song, as he explained it, was very much about trying to find a place in society. Now, he was gay, and was very conflicted about that from
Uh,
his youth, maybe till today. And so this was his way of trying to find his way.
sure.
And he credits Mose Allison for doing a song called Young Man Blues, without which he wouldn't have been able to create this
Yeah.
song.
Yeah.
So this song came out in the United Kingdom first, where they're from, in October of 1965. And I remember the date is the 29th,
Sure. Sure.
October. So this was almost 2 full years after the Beatles broke big time
Yeah.
in the UK. Remember, the Beatles came here in February '64, the Ed Sullivan Show, and did this tour, a bit of a tour.
Yeah.
So this was after they were influenced by the Beatles, and they were also influenced pre-Beatles, uh, as you know from
Yeah.
hearing
Yeah.
this information. So this song, with its angst, its
Yeah.
youthful angst, had the call and response. People try to put us down, and then the other two guys talking about my generation has that call and response that we know that goes back to soul music,
Sure.
that goes way
Sure.
back,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you know, if in the church. So very interesting facts about this song, but I just like it because it's just raw,
Sure.
and I identified with it at the time, kind of,
Yeah. 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 And too, Vince, what's interesting is, the song features one of the greatest lyrics in rock history of all time. The part where it says, "I hope I die before I get old."
I knew
And
you were going there.
yeah, and let me just say this before I let you react to this. Interestingly enough, both Keith Moon and John Entwistle died before they got old.
Whoa, really? Let me tell you. Back in the late '60s,
Yeah.
we had a movie come out, and about the youth in America. There was a young president that was, it was fictional, of course,
Sure.
under 30, or he was just about turning 30, and nobody wanted to turn 30.
Yeah.
No self-respecting youth or hippie or anybody wanted to be 30. It was over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, forget it. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah.
And of course, it was only about we were just beginning to live,
Yeah. Yeah.
as it turned out.
I
And
can relate to that because I remember when I was turning 30 years old. I can laugh about this now, but thinking, oh my God, I'm about to turn 30. 30 is so old. And that was kind of one birthday in my lifetime that I had the hardest with. The rest, just whatever. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because my daughter, who just turned 35 this December, this
Yeah.
past December, when she was turning 30, she was literally crying, "Oh, this is the end of the world." It was
Wasn't quite
oh,
that like
I'm
that
gonna
for
be
me,
30.
but yeah.
No turning back.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate. I can relate though. And another interesting aspect of the song, Vince, is Roger Daltrey's stuttering vocal, and I learned that that was influenced by, believe it or not, he was very influenced apparently by blues legend John Lee Hooker.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The song was "Young Man Blue." No, no, that one was. I forget the name of that one. The John Lee Hooker song.
Yeah.
Oh, "Stuttering Blues."
Oh,
"Stuttering Blues."
yeah.
Now,
Oh, okay.
did
Makes
you
sense.
look up the fact that the BBC wanted to ban this song, and the
Oh.
reason was they didn't want to offend stutterers.
Oh, wow. Who would have even thought of that? The things they think of. And like you said, we should point out that 60 years later, in 2025, when the band is celebrating, 60th anniversary, um, this song is very much a classic worldwide. But at the time of its release, like you said, it made a much bigger noise in the UK where they were from. And it wasn't because it only peaked at number 2, I believe, on the UK chart, while in the United States, it only peaked the Billboard chart at like number 74.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. It didn't make that much noise. Their first hit was "I Can't Explain," off the same album, which I
Yeah.
believe was called "The Who Sing My Generation."
Yeah, and that's much more radio friendly of a tune, and you could see why when you're first starting out in your career, you'd want to have a more radio friendly tune.
Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to this, I liked playing Keith Moon stuff, and so even when I was a kid, at 16 years old in my big high school rock band, we were playing this song. So I was playing this song from way back still to this day, you know that we have a band called Bangers,
Sure, sure. Yeah.
all right? That grew out of Shagwell's,
Okay.
that band, and so we do that song amongst others, and we do I Can't Explain as well in that group. So it gives me the opportunity to just go wild at the end and do all that Keith Moon stuff that I can still do today. Thankfully, to still be healthy enough and young enough.
Sure.
I'm a perennial 19-year-old.
I think music has kept you looking young, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's interesting. But who's an interesting band because while Daltrey and Townsend, as you would expect they would get most of the praise and most of the attention.
The credit.
By no small means is John Entwistle and Keith Moon. Do they not bring anything to the picture? I mean, I was reading this song specifically, "My Generation." Kind of the aggressive nature of the song is much of a songwriter and everything that Pete Townsend was. It was actually Keith Moon playing that made the song so aggressive.
That's right. That's right. It's really over the top, and the way it was produced as well. They just really did a fine job on it. I do remember that when they came out, and Pete Townsend was asked about what do you think is special about the music, and he says, "We don't know. We just figure we're just making a bunch of noise."
Yeah.
That's all that they figured, that they were like just noise. And I thought that was interesting because everybody's like an artist. They didn't think that they were an artist. They just wanted to go out and bang out the rock songs.
Yeah, yeah. And this has become really an iconic song, 60 years later. I mean, to the point that it's one of those songs that, like I said, it's been around for six generations of rock fans, and six generations worth of people have heard it in TV shows, movie soundtracks, even video games and stuff like that. So the song has really made its impact.
60 years this year.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Yeah,
It's amazing how music has a life of its own. Like I still like music from the 30s and 40s and the big band and 40s and 50s. So music, when it's recorded, when it's written, it still lives. Mozart, Beethoven, the great classics that just it transcends time. And this song is one of those songs that has done that. It speaks to a generation, but this speaks to every generation because you can apply the lyrics from then to every single musical generation that comes out, and they have that same angst. Like, why don't people understand who I am? Why don't they get who I am? How do I fit in? The song has a message that just
resonates
for everyone.
I mean, it's a rock anthem. It's a rock anthem, and what's interesting about that is I was reading initially when they recorded the song, it was they recorded at a much slower kind of pace. It sounded very different than what song we know it to be today.
Absolutely. It's just a really fun tune. It's got that message. It spoke to me.
Sure. And they would repeat that theme on other future classic Who songs. I mean, one that comes to mind obviously is Bab O'Reilly. Teenage Wasteland.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that showed where they had progressed in time. Looking back, of what the music had become and what the youth of America or the youth of the world had become. Just kind of on drugs, just wasted all the time. And also, this is one of the main hippie songs going forward. It was to me as a still hippie at heart.
Yeah.
We had peace and love, which is in short supply, it seems. But that theme, this theme is counter to that. It's like, let's get out there and fight the Stone Street fighting man later on.
I'm glad you brought that up because right off the top of your mind, you don't think of the Who as being part of the hippie generation, but they are. That's how far back they go. When we think of hippies, we think of like the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, but because that's more kind of immediately right there in the hippie movement. But but this was part of that as well, and that's when you're a band that's been around 6 decades, you've seen and done it all.
Absolutely. Even though we know the Summer of Love was 67, and the hippies were in full bloom by then, the movement, starting with the music from the Beatles going forward, from the British invasion going forward, and
Yeah,
then taking root in San Francisco, and then later on in New York and in LA,
sure.
it just it become a part of our lives and a part of who we were. This song has that place in music history
Yeah.
that it'll always be in music
And
history.
and I think Vince too that you and I have discussed this on some of our past shows that we did when we were doing Remembering Woodstock. The fact that a lot of the British bands that were big at this time, it was a big deal for them to come over to the United States. And what's interesting is the British rock bands at that era from that time. A lot of the American people were in the British bands. A lot of the people in the British bands were more into the American bands.
That's right, the blues. I
Yeah, yeah,
started with the blues and the R&B, or
yeah,
Chuck Berry and people like that. So they took the blues and the R&B, and then they created the beginnings of the British invasion, and then they got encouraged to write your own music.
yeah,
Hey, write your own music,
yeah.
and it became what we know happened.
Yeah, 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 and of course, Vince. Any band you listen to, pretty much, they have their prime. They have, um, their moment in time where that was their era. And I think the fact that Who's been around 6 generations, people, the Who definitely had their time. Probably, I would say in the '60s and '70s because they were quite relative, releasing new music up until I think '82, but let's be honest, the music they were releasing then wasn't as it didn't make as big of a splash, let's say, as what we're talking about today. I remember even in the early '90s, they tried putting out like one final studio album, and it really didn't sell that well. Why do you think that is when you got a guy like Townsend's just like I said, they had their prime? Period.
Probably just that they knew that they had run out the string. Plus, I do remember that after Keith Moon died,
Yeah,
it took the soul out of them. It
yeah,
really did. They had the replacement drummer Kenny Jones for a while, and he didn't do it for them.
yeah, yeah,
He stayed with them only for a short time. But the guy who's been on tour with them for years, they still tour,
yeah,
and they haven't completely stopped touring.
yeah.
Their drummer is Zach Starkey,
Hmm.
Ringo's son.
Yeah,
And
amazing. Yeah,
I saw them the year before the pandemic. I believe it was in San Diego at what they call the Sports Arena.
okay.
And Roger Daltrey can still do that scream
Yeah, yeah,
from Won't Get Fooled Again. And it was incredible. It shook the building. Zach took over for Keith in such a way that he played all the fills. I felt like I was listening
the
to
Keith.
Keith while Zach was playing.
And
And
that's
King Thomas couldn't do that stuff.
that's
Zach's
pretty amazing. If you're the guys in the Who and you were influenced by the Beatles, that you have Ringo Starr's son in your band now.
really, and it's almost like having a tribute band in a way
Yeah,
because you want to replicate what was done on the originals because the originals was what well, as
mhm,
fans,
yeah,
as music fans. So, but this song, boy oh boy, it just
yeah.
punched everybody in the gut.
And the Who's one of those bands, Vince, that they have influenced countless people. I mean, different types of people too. So much that another sign of that something's a really great song is when it's been covered over and over. And I was reading everybody from Green Day to Iron Maiden, Oasis, Patti Smythe have covered this song.
Oh, this song. Oh,
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah,
It just it lives. It's got a life of its own. This
yeah,
particular
yeah.
song,
And
and
you mentioned seeing the Who. I got to ask you. That's another thing besides what a great song and their catalog of music is, all their songs. That's the thing about the Who. Even sometimes from time to time, I'll catch myself hearing a song I've never heard before. They've got so many great tunes, and
yeah.
it's just as good as something like My Generation or Babel Riley. I mean, and that's the thing. Talking about the band playing live, as somebody that's seen the band, I mean, they got such a dynamic. It's more than just when you see them playing My Generation, for example, live in concert. It's more than just a great song. I mean, like you said, they got the live dynamics. It's even the type of microphone Roger Daltrey uses and how he throws it. Pete
For sure.
Townsend doing the windmill thing on the guitar.
For sure, sure. The first time I had seen them live, just remembering now, was at the LA Forum in the later 90s. I took
Yeah.
my wife there and they did the entire album Quadrophenia.
Hmm.
And then they other hits. At the time, John Entwistle was still alive, but
Oh
Zach
wow.
was just in the band for a while.
Yeah.
And so Zach's been with them 25, 30 years.
Yeah. And
Yeah, about 30 years, I
initially,
guess.
yeah, initially the Who broke up, I think, around 82 or 83, and they
Right.
didn't tour till the early 90s. When they had an anniversary, they said, "Oh, we think we'll go out on tour, do a reunion tour." The guys that are still left, which was Pete, John, and Roger at the time, and they did a performance of Tommy Live, and they got such a huge response that the band continued to tour ever since then.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that they go, I don't know, maybe this might be the last, but then it's not, you know?
Yeah.
And good for them. Good for
If it
them.
ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, even we talked about the fact that you used to play in a Rolling Stone cover band, and you guys did a great renditions of its Stone tunes. But even the Rolling Stones themselves to this day, I mean, sadly, Charlie Watts has passed away. He's the only one so far. The other guys are still up there. Even Mick Jagger, after having a heart attack or two, he's still up there. I think they're gonna die on stage.
Well, don't forget that Brian Jones passed away
Oh yeah,
in
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
68, 69.
yeah,
And so it just goes on, if sometimes it takes the life out of you when a close friend
sure.
who's a part of your band and you just feel like you just can't go on, but then there's that thing inside. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
talking about just being a musician, folks.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, that thing inside where you just can't stop. I remember when COVID came around and I was so depressed I didn't want to play anymore.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I had a famous drummer musician contact me personally to say, no, 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 you can't. I didn't know this guy was following me.
Wow, wow.
And I won't divulge who that is. But that gave me the impetus to want to continue to keep going. And here we go. And I really thank the Who for being instrumental, so to speak,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
in my life to give me the impetus just to keep playing. These
yeah.
guys, some of these guys who still are in the 60s, 70s, still playing, good for them.
And Vince, before
Man.
we wrap it up for today, I think a great place to do so is in reference to My Generation. They performed a song. I don't know if you probably seen it at the time. Tell me if you did. When they performed it on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
Yes, they said a bad word.
Legendary performance, but what's so legendary about it is what Keith Moon did to his drums and the way they exploded so much to the fact that is why that is when and where Townsend suffered his hearing loss.
Oh, with the explosion.
Yeah,
Yes, right. When I saw that, it was like, oh my goodness, I can't do that. Well, I did that
I
a
want
couple
to
of
do
times in a
that.
read,
Yes. Yeah,
but that was then. I've never
yeah,
done that
yeah,
since. So they're fun. And this song speaks to my generation, and it
yeah.
really does speak to other generations going forward in time. So,
Six
Jay,
generations, like I said, 6 decades of the Who. I mean, and for any band to have that kind of audience where you're constantly getting new fans, I mean,
right?
that's something. I mean, after a while, you think people would say, "Oh, the Who, they're that dinosaur band," but no, people.
No.
Even today, I hear a Who song. Yeah, I got to hear it all the way through, man.
It's got some life to it. Jay, I want to thank you so much, my
Yeah,
friend, for the time. And for those people watching, we're going to keep doing this about once a month.
once a month.
We're
Yeah,
going
and
to pick a new tune or a new category, and we're off.
I think we've got a great first episode here, Vince, and I think you'll agree that I see all the different possibilities of what we can do with a show like this.
Oh my
This was
goodness.
a lot of fun, my friend. So thanks again, and I'll see you next month.